Welcome to the Ohio Adult Allies podcast, where we are developing, inspiring, and empowering youth leaders. Today's topic is recruitment. Today we are talking with Holly Jacobson.
Hi everybody, I'm Holly Jacobson from Geauga Youth-Led Prevention. We are housed out of the ESC of the Western Reserve. I am doing youth-led prevention. We have about 12 different leadership groups that we do up here in Northeast Ohio, and I have been doing this work for about 7 years.
Jenny Canganelli.
Hi, I'm Jenny Canganelli, and I work with Holly at the ESC of the Western Reserve. I'm a community prevention specialist. I work with the youth-led prevention in Geauga County, serving school-based youth-led groups across the county.
Beth Thomas.
I'm Beth Thomas, and I have the pleasure of serving Fulton County Health Department and HC3, which is Healthy Choices Caring Communities. And I've been working with our school-based elementary middle school program, along with our community-based high school youth-led program for a little over 10 years now.
Kevin Rigby.
My name is Kevin Rigby. I work for Comp Drug and Youth to Youth. I run our Youth Advisory Board program and some of our other school-based programming that we do in Central Ohio. And I was a youth growing up in prevention and youth-led. I started in 2002 and started working for the program in 2007. So 13 years as an employee and 18 total years involved in youth-led.
And your host, Jessica Kalura.
Well, we are honored to have you all here with all of the experience that you've had to talk to us today about the topic of recruitment. And this is a topic of interest for many adult allies as they enter the field, and for experienced adult allies of how do you engage young people in your youth-led program, and how do you ensure that you're constantly kind of bringing in and recruiting new youth as well. So to start off, we thought it would be helpful if everyone could just briefly, in a minute or two, explain their basic process that you use for recruitment with your youth-led program.
Awesome. Yeah, we use all different types of recruitment processes and have just tried to do everything and hope that that they stick. So we focus on peer-to-peer recruitment with our young people, recruiting their friends and people that they go to school with, adult to youth recruitment in the schools, school-based recruitment, parent outreach, really trying to touch base with adults that are in students' lives. And we also do a lot of social media recruitment through our social media accounts and creating campaigns and things for our young people to do as well. So we try to just hit on all media types and all face-to-face recruitment efforts. We try to do it all.
Find one to be more successful than others, Kevin?
I think it really just depends on what age we are looking to recruit. We're focusing on recruiting for our middle school programming. The peer-to-peer, just reaching out to young people, the youth, middle schoolers, doesn't yield as good a results as if you can touch base with their parents or some other caring adult in their lives, where same kind of thing with freshmen and sophomores that aren't really driving yet, since our program isn't, our main program isn't in the schools, really getting the parent buy-in or somebody who's making those decisions for them, their buy-in oftentimes works better, along with the students' buy-in as well. But if we're recruiting older, juniors and seniors, really, peer-to-peer recruitment works awesome for them because a lot of them can drive and or ride with their friends or they have a little bit more freedom. So it's just really situational, I think.
So it depends on the program in which we're working with. With our school-based program, we focus on implementing in the classroom during the school day, so it's much more determined by school staff or parent permission. With our community-based high school program, we have a more formal application process. We have 2 recruitment periods a year. We started out with just a spring recruitment, and then we added a December-January recruitment, as we found a lot of kids wanted to have a little taste of the program before they started in the program and committed to an entire year. So what we do during our recruitment process is we ask our current members to bring a friend to a meeting. So they think about their peers that might be interested in joining our youth-led program, and they bring them to try out a meeting with absolutely no commitment, and then they determine whether they want to follow up with the formal application process. Like I mentioned, we do have a more formal application process in which they're completing the application, including a statement about why they want to be involved in a youth-led, and then once they're admitted to the program, then they do sign a commitment to remain substance-free as part of that application process. Much like Kevin, we reach out through social media, peer-to-peer. We still are reaching out to adult coalition members, asking them to recommend young people they think might be involved. And we've had a lot of success in reaching out directly to school staff, particularly principals and guidance counselors, asking those individuals to look at their students and find those kids that are really looking for a place to belong or looking for an opportunity to develop their voice. And we've had a lot of success when we're able to engage school staff in that type of recruitment efforts.
Ours is really super situational. We have, 12 different groups that are in different areas. We have a countywide group, which is an after school. Well, it's not even after school, it's an evening group, which are more for high school students. And then we also have in-school youth-led groups that we're doing. And then we also have career centers. We have residential facilities. So it really depends on where we're at. But I think our biggest thing is we do rely quite a bit on the schools to recommend students or to say, hey, this would be a great student for your group. But what we found is that we didn't have enough diversity doing that. So we started actually going in ourselves and like hanging out in the school, like obviously with permission, but going and hanging out in the school, meeting students, and also then, once we start to meet those students, build that relationship, then we're like, hey, you know what, we're doing this group. Are you guys interested? So I would say Jenny and I do a lot of the recruiting in person. We do also ask the schools, the counselors, teachers. We do peer-to-peer as well. But again, I think our biggest thing is we actually like go in and start to meet the students and then recruit that way.
And like Holly was saying, some of our school-based groups start with a core. In fact, we just tried working with one of our elementary schools this fall, and it started as some of their members that the teacher recommended that were already involved in a student council that wanted to go through more of a leadership training and develop more of a peer-to-peer group. So we just started working with them. So we do rely a lot on teachers and school counselors to recommend, but Holly and I are really finding that the more we are in the schools, the more present we are, the more we start building relationships is probably going to be our best way to recruit new youth for our groups.
Thank you all for sharing those perspectives. It was really helpful to hear the diversity of methods that you use for recruitment and how they really are age and context dependent. One of the other questions we frequently have from adult allies is curiosity about what the message is that you share with youth when you're doing recruitment. So what are some of the things you say or explain to them when trying to engage them in your youth-led group?
A lot of our messaging is around three core ideas. And one is that we're asking young people if they're looking for a place to belong. We have found that for a lot of young people, they don't have a niche yet. And particularly when we're looking at those middle school youth, they haven't figured out which group they belong to, or maybe it's switched as they move from middle school to high school, and now they're feeling a little lost. And so we really want to touch base with that human need to connect with others. So that's one of our central themes. Another central theme is the idea of, do you want to make a difference? Do you want to have a positive impact on your community, and how we can help you through this process of youth-led to do that? And that links into that last core message, and that is about developing or using more effective ways to use your voice. All young people, all adults, everybody wants to be able to contribute to the world. And sometimes young people want to use their voice, but they don't know how to do it in a positive way. So we incorporate all three of those core messages in our messaging as we're reaching out through our recruitment efforts.
So I think one of our biggest ways and most convenient things that we use to recruit is we really use the message of empowerment. We really work to empower our young people. And, I usually start with like, this isn't about me. This isn't about what I want. This isn't about what your teachers or your principal or your school wants. This is about what you guys want to see change. And how can I help you do that? I want to help you be the change agents in our school and in our community. So we really use empowerment as our biggest thing, and the other thing that I like to tell the students is I don't care if you're failing every class in this school. I don't care. I don't care about your past. I don't care if you recently got in trouble. All I care about is that you want to make a difference, and I want to help you do that. And so we want to work with you from here on out to create those changes within themselves and within their school and community. So that's really our biggest message.
Oftentimes, and I think I've fallen into the trap when, times are tough and, we don't have a lot of youth involved, or I know other groups as well that I've worked with fall into the trap about making recruitment and making, it about the program and what the program needs, and that we need you so that we can be great, so that we can be good. And I just think, that is just really just a wrong way to go about that. And any time that I've ever made it about what youth to youth needs, we don't see success. So really making it about what that one individual young person or this group of youth need, and that they feel empowered, that they feel like they have a voice. That can't be overstated. So any way that somebody can figure out how to work that into their messaging and for that message to connect, that's going to be a win.
Kevin, I think you bring up such a great point, because I think wrapping around all this, it's about knowing your community and knowing your young people and knowing what it is that they need in their community, what they may not be getting someplace else in their community. And I think you just summed that up so well. So thank you for that thought.
And I'd like to add one other thing to that, because I think you're so right. And like, we have to wrap all this stuff down. We have to know our community. We did a survey last year where we asked youth-led groups, traditional leadership groups, and we asked students that weren't involved in any of those an empowerment survey. So we gave them an empowerment survey. And what we found is that no matter where they were, whether they were in a group that was youth-led, that was leadership, or they weren't in a group at all, every one of them felt like they could make a change in their school or community. But what was different was their access to and how they could. And so what we noticed is that all the students feel like they want to change something and they feel like they can, but they just don't have that outlet and they don't know how. And so I think youth, coming in and doing youth-led really helps them with that, and taking them through that process really gives them that outlet to make that change that they feel inside already.
So as Holly was saying, our message really is about empowering the youth that we work with. And as Beth was saying, giving them that voice, giving them that safe space to have a voice and discuss ways they want to make those changes in their schools and communities is really important.
Thanks, Jenny. So we heard a lot about the message that you all deliver to young people when you're recruiting them to your program. Based on what you said at the beginning of this conversation, we also know that peer-to-peer recruitment is some aspect of your recruitment strategy that you use. So what's the message that young people deliver to each other when they're seeking to recruit others to the group?
I would say it's probably different for each individual, because all of our groups and youth specifically, there's so many different avenues, so many different ways that they can be empowered, or that their voice can be heard, or things that they can be involved in, that that if they connect with one of those things, or if they have that a certain feeling, they're going to share how they feel and what being involved feels like for them. And that feeling is different for everybody, but for some of them, it's going to be like, this is just a place where we can have fun, and we're around people that are also making positive decisions, and at the same time we get to do cool stuff. So it can be very like surface level, just come along, and at the same time, others who may be more involved or may have been around a little bit longer are going to really touch on some of those core messages and core beliefs. And, they know the lingo more. They really know what they're getting out of it, and also what they get to give to it or through it. So that messaging is going to really echo maybe more of what Beth was saying about, touching on those core, messages, or the core beliefs of the program, that we're here to make a positive impact and empower other young people through, community change. And, they're going to say those things, but say them in a, fun way that they know that their peers are going to connect with as well. And I just think anytime that we can get recruitment coming from a young person or somebody that isn't, a paid employee of the program, it is going to be, I don't know that it's more effective, but it just adds to it's as effective, and it adds to what we're trying to get out of it.
So what we typically do is we kind of ask our young people, like, what would you tell somebody this group is about, right? What do you think is the most important thing? Why would you think some of your peers would want to join? And then we listen to their message, and then we critique it here or there if there's some things that need to be added. But the biggest thing that they usually tell their peers, which I personally think is great, is they say this is a group that actually does something. A lot of times they're involved in a group where they are just going around in circles, or they are told exactly what to do. And so their biggest message that they use for their own peers is that this is a group that actually does something, and we're actually making a difference.
And I think sometimes young people join the youth-led groups for similar reasons as Kevin and Beth were stating, for the social. It's something to do. It's a group. I have a 7th and then an 8th grade middle school group that meets during their lunch, and the one groups, there's a lot of the friends, their peer group is in it. And I think sometimes it starts out as that social outlet, but then once they see that, wow, this is a group that does actually do something and we can focus on positive changes. And then if they come back the next year, I think that just builds a stronger group. And then they're even more able to explain to their peers what youth led is about.
It's interesting to hear how much of the message is really about your young people's intrinsic motivation and connecting like what's in it for them and that contribution to their broader communities. I know oftentimes adult allies, particularly when they're starting new programs, are eager to offer incentives or stipends as a way or a method of recruiting young people. That's something I haven't heard anyone address yet. It sounds like most of it is around the messaging and just the value of the work and the experience that they'll have. So I'm just curious if any of you do offer stipends or incentives, and if so, what those are.
Specifically for youth to youth, it's something that like I said, we've tried everything, right? We want to figure out any way possible to get young people in the door to make an impact on them so that they can make an impact on their community. But in my experience, I just have not found success in stipends or like actual like physical incentives. Obviously they love receiving it, but it just never seems to be the thing that gets somebody in the door. We've given away everything from t-shirts to iPads to anything to get students involved. And it seems like a lot of times, like the more money we spend on an incentive, it feels like we're just giving it to one or two people. Like, it feels like we're giving money away to the students who are already super involved. Like we already have their buy-in, and they seem to be the ones that always come out on top for recruiting incentives, or new people come down like, yeah, I'll take a t-shirt, but it's more the only reason they came was oftentimes because their friend brought them or something like that. So if there's something that I'm missing or that we're missing when it comes to incentives, if somebody else has the magic tool, cool, let me know about it, because incentives I don't have the touch when it comes to that and figuring that piece out.
Much like Kevin, we don't offer a lot of incentives. The kids get a t-shirt. Some of our students, if they have a challenge of getting to the meetings, we may do mileage reimbursement to parents to help pay for that cost. But like Kevin said, I think if you offer incentives, my experience has been that you just have to keep offering a larger carrot. And I don't think that's why the majority of our young people participate, is for those things. Like Kevin said, they'll take them. But I think we have to remember that we've already had their buy-in. We can thank them and be appreciative of their work, but I don't think that's where, for many of our young people, that's where the win is for them.
I have to agree with both of those things. Incentives aren't really doing anything for us, especially. I mean, don't get me wrong. We have gone in with we don't have quite the iPads or t-shirts or stuff like that, but we've gone in with candy and tried to bribe them with candy and come listen to our message, come check us out. And we did find that if we use candy, they at least come over and start talking to you. And then that's where we start to get the buy-in. But other than that, we really don't. It's really just giving them that empowerment message and letting them feel like, hey, this is a place I belong. I can actually make a difference and I can change things. And so it's really giving them more of those internal needs versus the external gifts.
The incentive really, it's more like after the fact, after they're there. The incentive is more related to the retention and keeping them involved rather than the recruitment. If they're there and there's food. Boom. Oh, there's food here, but that's not why I came, but I enjoy that I just ate 3 boxes of pizza, or that I got a random t-shirt today, or that there's something that, maybe that is going on where there's gift cards involved in a game night or something like that. Like those sort of incentives that are more focused on, just the retention and keeping them engaged. Oftentimes that they're not planned, they're not looking for that. Those often, work very well for continued engagement, I think, more than getting them in the door.
That's an important distinction. It was helpful for me to hear the difference of using incentives, of thinking of them as a motivation to participate to begin with versus an actual retention strategy to keep young people engaged. So thanks for pointing that out. The other thing that I'm hearing in this conversation and that we know is that in order to recruit young people, oftentimes you first have to get the buy-in of other entities like a school district. I've heard that referenced through all of you in today's conversation. In order to do the recruitment, you often are doing something face-to-face in the schools to deliver the message about youth-led programs. So I'm curious if you could speak a little bit to how you create that buy-in or how you recruit schools to allow you to then reach their youth population.
For us, and this is, I think, been a shift in the recent years, is we've looked at our involvement in the schools and involvement with other community programs as a recruitment as a recruitment tool, that we can go in and provide a service for free in the schools, that we're not getting paid by the school district, isn't paying us to come in and do these presentations or connect with their students, or partnering with community organizations and just being a part of their youth-led groups as another supporting adult. It gives us the ability to connect with students on a deeper level, have more face-to-face time with them. We're offering a lot of our time and, some specific services for free per se, and we're getting some involvement and hopefully some students who are connected to our programming on the back end of that, so that it kind of comes back to us as well. So partnerships, I think prevention in general and youth led, and there's just been a big shift in my time, in my 13 years working, that there were a lot of groups operating in silos and operating that I have to work with my group of kids, and I can't bring Kevin in because Kevin's going to steal my kids. That's just, I think there's just been a big shift, just from more connection amongst professionals that are doing youth led, that like, hey, we can all access these students, we all have something different, or we all have positive things to give. So we welcome other people in as well to our groups, and students get involved with their groups outside, and I find that just being really important, figuring out ways to partner and offer our time for someone else's group, and then we may benefit from student involvement on the back end of that.
I agree wholeheartedly with Kevin. A lot of it is about community partnership. Anytime you're doing coalition building, we always want to go with our hand out, asking how we can help, as opposed to asking, what they can do for us. So in our small rural community, the fact that our youth-led prevention program is housed in our health department gives us a great foundation because it has a positive reputation in the community. So the health department is seen as a great resource for lots of services toward young people and families, because we happen to house a lot of the coalition efforts for our community. So that gives us a great foundation. So like Kevin said, when we're reaching out to the schools saying, we can offer professional development, we can offer services to your families, your parents, do some education pieces. More and more they reach out to us saying, how we have this need, how can you help us fill it? And if we can't personally fill it, we are well connected in our community to find somebody else that can fill that need. And as a result of that, then once they trust us and we have that established strong relationship, then that ask to continue to expand our services into youth-led, or asking them to allow us into their schools to make those recruitment pieces, is a lot easier of an ask. So I always think you have to start with building those relationships by offering what you can do for somebody else versus asking them for something to benefit you.
The biggest thing is building those relationships. So I mean, you can go knock on anybody's door and ask to go in and do a program or to come in and do something, but that's not going to mean anything. There's no relationship there. You have to build a relationship with those people in the school. I think the biggest thing that we do is we really work on the relationship with the principals, the counselors, and the teachers before we even go in to start potentially recruiting students. Like, we really work on, hey, this is what we do, this is what you guys do, this is awesome, and just getting to know each other first, and then really getting into like, hey, have you heard about our program? This is what we do. Oh, we don't have it here. So really developing that relationship. And honestly, it takes time. It's not like we just like went in, built a relationship in a day, and we're good to go with our program. Sometimes it takes several months to get there before you can even bring up this idea of like something that you may have. And the other thing is like really collaborating with not only the schools, but also with other community members or people that also may be in there and that you could be working with. Or, I know one of the things that we did to really try to like get to know people and build relationships is, we sit on the PBIS teams at a couple schools. So, we're part of what they're doing. Instead of just we're not necessarily looked at as an outside agency. We're looked at as somebody that's part of the school. Sometimes people think we work for the school, and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't work here. Like, I work somewhere else, but we're here working together, right? Because we're no longer seen as separate. We're now one entity, as we're trying to work with our young people and build those relationships.
Absolutely. As Holly was saying, having that relationship in the schools is huge. Holly and I are lucky that we also do some prevention programming in the middle schools and high schools and elementary schools. So the kids get to know us. The teachers get to know us, the school counselors, the principals. We walk around schools and they recognize us. So then, you're building those relationships. They're recognizing our faces. They hear about us. They hear about how fun our classes are. And so it's a natural flow sometimes then to try to recruit them to be involved in the youth led.
And I think a piece that maybe we didn't touch on is talking with parents. So we try to find lots of opportunities to connect with parents, again, not necessarily about our program, but maybe a broader conversation through area organizations like Rotaries, or we work a lot with our after prom committee, parent committees, to provide some education about substance use in our community, because that happens to be the focus of our coalition and our youth-led work. And then kind of you work in a little bit about some of the work that our young people are doing and sharing and celebrating the different accomplishments our young people have. And I think that's just a great way to engage the general community as well as parents, so they have a better understanding when it applies to them personally, when they might have a kiddo that's the right age to be involved in the program.
Yeah, and I would say too, when I think it was Holly and Jenny that kind of brought up the relationship with counselors and principals and teachers and things like that. I think outcomes, oftentimes, school personnel, like outcomes are a huge deal for teachers, and like they're used to meeting outcomes. They're a big deal for us too. But if we're not showing outcomes with their students, like if they're not seeing a progression of their students, or they're not seeing our involvement or our connection to the school, if they're not seeing things that come out of that, if it just feels like we're there to check a box or get our numbers, then it can actually work against us, where they're not as willing for us to be in the school as much, or they're not going to promote our program to other teachers or to parents. But if we're doing good work and we're meeting the outcomes that we've created for those groups in the schools, and they can see their young people growing and doing things, then that word of mouth is going to go a long way. And really, that's the cool thing, is that other people, teachers, principals, parents, counselors, other people in the community start recruiting for you, saying, oh, I know this program, or I know this thing that your student, your child can get involved with. And, you haven't even asked them to do that. And we just always have to, be mindful that, we gotta do this work and do it well. So it doesn't end up working against us.
And I think Kevin brings up a really good point, that it's critical not to only do good work, but to tell our story, to be really intentional about linking our outcomes and having that link to the the outcomes that the schools or communities are looking for, whether that's increased attendance or increased graduation rates or decrease in behavioral issues at school, anything that we can do to help link our work, or not only do that, but tell that story. Because I think sometimes we do the work, but we're hesitant to share that success, to be able to say, there's a link between the work we're doing here and the outcomes that you're seeing in your broader program, regardless whether your youth led is in a community base or in a school base. And I think that's a critical piece, to make sure we're truly intentionally telling our stories with that data and the outcomes that we have, but we're not always, we just don't want to share it as celebrate as much as maybe we should.
And I think the other piece of that too is, like both what Kevin and Beth just said, is you want to do it and you want to do it well, and you need to share your outcomes. And, this is where we want to go, or this is where the programs usually lead and help. And these are the statistics, and this is what it changed. But one of the things that I also noticed is, like, you have to tell them the process. Like, we can't just go in there and say, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to make these amazing changes and it's going to be awesome. You have to explain that it's a process and that it takes time. Things are not going to just change overnight. It takes time. And as Jessica says, trust in the process, right? Like, and so we have to then convey that message to, most of the time we're working with schools. So we have to convey that to the schools. It's like, yeah, this is great. And we're going to do awesome work. And where you guys are going to see these outcomes, but it's going to take time if we're going to do it, and we're going to do it well. And then there is a process to do that. And so, once you build those relationships, you're open and honest with them, and you can share all of those things and those challenges and what's working and what's not working. And that's where that relationship is really important, because that's going to just move you forward.
So I'm hearing a lot about the importance of relationships when you're recruiting entities to partner with you, and how much it also matters to kind of have had those other successes to kind of build on the reputation, and that kind of snowballs to help then garner more support and more access to other schools and other community organizations. We know that there's also a lot of adult allies who are in our network who are on the ground trying to start a new youth-led program, who might not have the existing benefits that many of you are speaking to. So I'm wondering what experience you have with initiating a new youth-led group, and what were kind of some early wins or pointers that you could give others when thinking about initiating a new group.
For us, we just recently started doing some new school-based programming and had to really build that from the ground up. So it was a new process, because like you just said, youth has been around for a long time, and we've really been able to benefit off of that, just that length of time that we've been in existence. But now we got to going into a school where the administration and people don't really know what youth is, and they don't have a concept of, like, they don't care that we've been around for 38 years or whatever. Like, going back to that previous conversation of, well, what are you going to be doing here? How are you going to be impacting my students? How are you going to be preparing them for life after high school? It really took building relationships and really connecting multiple times and figuring out how to get face to face with those stakeholders and people that matter in the school, that are going to give you the permission to have time in their building. And that was a long process, and really sharing what just like Holly was saying, sharing that process. I had to really point out, here's what we're going to be doing, here's what's going to be connected, that here's going to be the outcomes of your students, and this is how it's going to benefit them, this is how it's going to benefit us, this is how it's going to benefit you. And once we got the go ahead, I mean, I'm not going to big myself up, but I'm a pretty cool guy. So I have some other pretty cool guys on the team, and being pretty cool guys, and we got a lot of students engaged, and a lot of students wanted to be involved. We had some students that were already involved in our countywide programming at the school, and it ended up being this big deal. First meeting, I was expecting 10 to 12. We had like 35. And the second meeting, we had like 50. And so it was like, wow, this is amazing. There's no way that we can do this. Our capacity, we can't do this effectively, do what we wanted to do in 45 minutes. But at the same time, now we have principals and counselors who are like, you have 50 students that want to be engaged in what you do, and you sold it to us. So, now we have to figure it out. How do we meet the needs of, between 30 and 50 kids? And, eventually it evened out and got smaller, and we were, down in the 20s and 30s. But that was a really cool part of the process of, oh, this was successful, and then challenging at the same time of, oh, we have to revamp everything that we had planned for this small group of 15 that isn't a small group of 15. So, and it just took a lot of creative thinking, and I think that is the key to initiating something. Is it may be exactly what you think it is, but 9 times out of 10 is probably going to be different than you thought it was going to be. So having like contingency plans and different ideas for the programming that you can do is just really important when initiating something new.
We had a similar experience to Kevin in the fact that we had an established, long 10-year established community-based high school program and wanted to develop a middle school-based school program specifically for young men, because we have a program in our communities that are already established for young women. So we chose 2 pilot schools to start that process. The principals were fairly easy sells. They were principals that were engaged in our high school program, had students in our high school program, and were pretty willing to let us move forward. Where we ran into problems is our at that age they still have classroom teachers, multiple classroom teachers, the way our middle schools are structured, and those teachers weren't as familiar with our program. So we had to do exactly what Kevin talked about: explain the process, explain our outcomes, explain our expectations. And then the key for us was flexibility. So we started the program, we got their buy-in, and then we ran into problems, simple things, but we met, and that was a time, the way the schedule worked out for the schools, that was a time where the young people all got to be able to get together and do these special activities, and then the kiddos that were in our program all of a sudden were not allowed to be in that special activity. Well, whoa, that wasn't working for the teachers. They were listening to the kids who were very unhappy that they were coming to our program as opposed to this kind of fun free-for-all kind of thing that was going on at the school during that time. And so we had to back off, regroup, go to them and say, hey, how can we make this work? And I think that is so important, not only the creativity, but the flexibility. Don't go in with a one size fits all. We've had to be very innovative in how we implement that. Even within our 2 pilot schools, we have slightly different programs and structures. And now we're in the process of reaching out to our other 5 school districts in our county. And we're going to, again, have to implement lots of creativity and innovation and flexibility as we're making those asks.
Kevin, one thing that you said made me think of another common concern that we have for adult allies when they're starting a program and trying to initiate it for the first time, and that's about the number of youth. So we know that oftentimes, especially when you're first starting a program, your goal might be 20 or 30 young people to be participants eventually, but often it's hard to get 20 or 30 people to the table as a starting point. So Holly, I'm wondering if you and Jenny can just speak a little bit to how many youth, when you're starting a youth-led program, how many young people you usually see at the table?
Sure. So honestly, it really depends. We've gone in where we've started with 4 students, right? Like that's all you could get. That's all the students that were interested or that wanted to be there. And that's what you start with. And I don't really think any number is too small to start, because you have to start somewhere. You're not just going to walk in. I mean, Kevin's a cool guy, but maybe I'm not as cool. I don't know. And I can't always go in and recruit, 50 different students, or our schools just aren't that big where we don't even have that many students to recruit. So, we've started groups with like 4 or 5 students. I've walked in our career center and we have 2 different groups there, and there's sometimes 60 students that are in there. So, and honestly, sometimes that's too much. There's, it really, you have to start somewhere. So start with the basics, start with what you know. And the other thing is, especially if you're new into this or you're new into that school and you're still getting to know that school or that group or that community, you don't want to go in guns a-blazing thinking that you can take on everything. Get in there, take what you can handle and then grow it from there, because things are going to change. And you go in with one mindset, and the next thing you know, you're like way over here and you're like, oh, that's not where I started. It's not where I thought I was. And that's okay. And it takes time. It really takes time to build the groups.
And I think adding to that, and I know Beth touched on this, that flexibility part, you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know we strive to try to recruit a diverse group. And sometimes, and if this truly is youth led, it's their voice, it's their ideas that we need to listen to and support. So that flexibility piece is huge because you just don't know. And, you can have a productive group with 4 students and you can have a really unproductive group with 60. But the flexibility is huge, and really getting to know your group and the schools they're in, the settings they're in, and just building upon that.
Yeah, to add to that, I think, big numbers get your heart beating, and it makes you like excited because in the work we do, like numbers matter on when we're doing reporting and things like that. So you're like, ooh, I have big numbers to show. Like I made this happen, but then it can like Jenny just said, do those big numbers equal the same outcome? A lot of times it's, if it's you as one person, you're going to be able to get a lot more done with 10 kids than you are 50, just because numbers matter. And the greater access you have to students, or the more time you can spend with a smaller group, it can really be a a benefit to building a program for it to be, sometimes a little bit of a smaller group than just this huge group. In the same situation, we were at a different school doing the same thing, and that group, we didn't have the same amount of buy-in. And, that group had 6 people starting out, and, it it was easier to start building connections with those 6. And then building the group up from there. So it is really situational, but when you have those big numbers, you have to figure out how to, all right, now we have 50, or now we have 35. Like, now how do we break them down into smaller groups so that we have 35 kids in this room, but they're workable, and I can go work with this small group of 6 and this small group of 6. And I echo what you guys said for sure.
I think
And I
Kevin
would,
just really nailed it in the fact that we had the same situation. We started out with a small number of kids 10 years ago, and then all of a sudden we grew rapidly and we didn't have the capacity. Kids were reporting less satisfaction with the group because they didn't feel connected to each other. And then actually following on youth to youth model of family groups, we started building in different levels of participation kind of within our group. And we broke off and we had a leadership board that made some of the more higher executive type decisions, more like a steering committee. And then we had kind of general membership that they were all still involved, all still doing the different work, but different levels of engagement. And then we, using youth to youth model, had those family groups that allowed kids to connect with each other. And I think that's really important, and probably a common thing that happens, that you might start out small, but then you might grow rapidly, and you really have to, again, have a contingent plan of how to address that if that might happen to you.
and I definitely think recruitment doesn't necessarily equal retainment, right? So one of the other things you want to do is you want to recruit students, but you also want to retain them. And I think what Kevin said is really important, is you have the opportunity to build relationships with a small group of students versus getting a bigger group of students, which is great, but you don't necessarily have, there's so much more that's involved in a huge group of kids, because it's, now all of a sudden you're like, okay, what do I even do with all of them? How do I make sure that this is successful? How do I make sure it's structured? Like, there's 1 or 2 of me and there's 60 young people, so, and you don't have the time to build those relationships. And so what happens is then what we've seen is you start to lose students and young people, and they're like, okay, this is too much. This is whatever. And the next thing you know, you're back down to a manageable, I like to call a manageable number for myself, which is more of like, hey, this is manageable. Now I can build these relationships. I can retain the students that I've already recruited, and now move forward from there.
Yep, I would say like de-recruitment is definitely a thing. Like, you can definitely, if students aren't engaged, then they're also like, the engaged students are going to tell their friends how much fun they're having, but the students who aren't engaged are also going to tell their friends, yeah, you don't want to be involved in that. Like, you're just going to be wasting your time, or you're not doing nothing. You're not going to get anything out of it. So you really, the number has to relate, it has to connect to how engaged that those students can be. And what number that is, it really depends on your capacity as an organization.
Whole notion even that we heard within incentives too, of the recruitment versus retention, and you hear it again coming up with the numbers of youth that you're seeking. It's really powerful to hear you all speaking from your experience on those ideas. So when you are recruiting young people, you have access to the schools, you're giving careful thought to both what recruitment means in terms of retention and the quality of the work that you can do with the young people. How are you also then thinking through and ensuring that you're recruiting diverse young people that are representative of whatever diversity exists in your communities?
Our diversity is a huge thing for us, especially being in Central Ohio with a very diverse group. We have access to huge population of students, and each school may look different, so school-based programming may look different. So it may be less about like economic status or race or things like that, and more about like the different types of young people that are you're sporty, or your mathletes or whatever. But as a whole, we just find that we want to first do that with our staff and make sure that our staff is a diverse representation of who we want to see in our program. So we make that a very intentional process of hiring and having a diverse group of diversity of thought, race, gender, all of that. And then those students that we are oftentimes asking to do recruiting for us, or we're taken out to do presentations, we want to make sure that they represent a diverse group of students, and that they're coming across, and when they're introducing themselves, they're talking about things that they like, things that they do, to where somebody in the audience or different students that they're talking to connect with them on different levels. And diversity is just it's one of the bigger things when it comes to retention, because if a student walks into your program and they immediately feel comfortable, they see someone that looks like them, or see somebody that they can connect to, and they can start making those connections, they're more likely to come back the next week. They're more likely to stay involved. And if a young person walks in and feels isolated, then it's hard pressed that you're probably not going to see them again without if you don't have a relationship with them. So every group, every time that we engage students, diversity is at high on the list of making sure somebody feels included and accepted.
This is an area where we've really struggled. We live in a small rural county. We don't have a lot of diversity when it comes to race. We certainly have lots of diversity in thought and gender and things like that. The part that we've really struggled is connecting with kids that maybe have struggled with substance use issues in the past, maybe kids that aren't quite the more obvious leaders or established leaders in their community. And we've worked really hard in helping not only in our recruitment efforts, but also with making sure that our established young people are very welcoming and inclusive in their actions. So they're not intentionally or unintentionally, sending the wrong message to other young people that they aren't welcome here. And so a lot of our work has been done on cultural competency within our young people, and helping them understand that just because someone might look like them doesn't mean that they share the same values or life experiences. And so a lot of our work has revolved around that. And we have not, I can't say we've been successful in terms of recruiting a culturally lived experience diversity, but it's something that we certainly value and continue to try to strive to find ways to accomplish that more, to do a better job of that recruitment and within our communities.
So we actually just did an entire learning series on this, where we talked about diversity within our our youth-led groups and among our young people. We're very similar to Beth. We live in Geauga County. We are very rural. We have a large Amish population. We have half of our county, which is very well off. We have the other half of our county, which we just recently had 2 schools shut down. So diversity isn't just visual diversity, it's the internal diversity as well. So we really don't, 97% of our population is white. Like if you look at it in Geauga County, you're like, they don't have diversity there. but when you actually like get into the internal stuff that you can't necessarily see on the outside, we have a lot of diversity. And so what we really try to do is we want to recruit students from all different areas. And, you know, at the beginning when we talked about like Jenny and I go in and we recruit, because one of those things is when you talk to the schools and you say, oh, we're, you know, we have this youth led group, blah, blah, they're going to give you, you know, the perfect straight A, top of the line student who's never, you know, had a hair out of place and never done anything wrong, which is wonderful, but that's not representing your entire student body. And so that diversity piece, you want students from every different, you know, group that you have in there. And so we really go in and Jenny and I would go and we talk to those groups and we talk to those students, and, you know, we build relationships with as many diverse people as possible so that we can then say, hey, you know, have you ever heard of this group? And, you know, and recruit them so that they can join. And one of the things that we did find is if you really have a student that is like, you know, they feel very different, just visually even looking. One of the things we've noticed is like, hey, bring a friend with you. And that gets them to feel a little more comfortable, and they come and then they're like, oh, this isn't so different. And when we start going through our group cohesion and our group process, what they notice is that, oh, hey, I'm not in your same group, but you guys have the same concerns as I do. And so then we really start that diversity piece, and then it starts to break down those barriers. And so it's really super, I mean, that's probably one of our most important things when we're recruiting, is to really make sure we're representing the entire student body if you're wanting to create change for everyone.
And I think the challenge sometimes is educating school personnel. You know, when we come in and we say we want to recruit for our youth-led groups, sometimes they don't believe us when Holly and I say we don't want just the traditional leaders of your school, because typically they are involved in 100 different clubs and AP classes and working, and they're so busy. We want those students that are from the different groups, like Holly said. And it is truly amazing when you see them come in and they're skeptical and they look like maybe they feel like they don't belong. And then they start talking about the problems they see in their schools and communities. And they, you know, they bond with this group of young people that they may never associate with outside of that setting. But I think it's a great opportunity for young people to respect people from other diverse groups and backgrounds and histories and lived experiences. And really, it's a great way to show them that you can all come together and you share this voice and you can do something really positive.
And I can speak to that as a young person as well, being involved in a youth-led program where, you know, I came from the inner city as, you know, we didn't have a lot, and I was able to go to this program and meet people from all over. Like I lived on the south side of Columbus, and the only time I ventured out from the south side of Columbus was to go to church on the north side, you know, and without youth to youth and without being involved in the youth-led group on a larger scale, I wouldn't have had a lot of opportunities to meet students from other parts of Columbus, let alone some of the suburban students in our county. And some of my deepest connections as a young person were not to the friends that I brought along with me. The friendships that I still have to this day are students that I met, you know, that went to different schools on different sides of town, and that were in different socioeconomic class than me, because what it did was, you know, initially I went in and obviously I immediately stereotyped, you know, students from the more, you know, wealthier schools. But as I got to know them, you know, what we see in youth-led groups is that, you know, our young people, they're interested in a lot of the same things. They have connections with other people. We just have to be the ones to facilitate young people learning that, oh, I am very similar to this person that doesn't look like me, or, you know, doesn't come from the same background as me, or what have you. And that really, it was a little mind blowing for me at the time. Like I'm the same as this person that really is nothing like me, that comes from a different community than me, and that we can have this relationship And that, back to that retention thing, that kept me coming back week after week. It's like, well, let me see if this relationship continues to grow. Like, let me learn more about this person, because I'm a little perplexed that we're similar, So from a young person's perspective, I just, definitely agree that how diversity impacts recruitment and retention as well, just by having it.
I think Kevin just summed up one of the biggest gifts you could give a young person is the opportunity to connect with somebody who has very different experiences from them, and recognize that you are probably more like than you are different. And I think that's just a really important key just in life, let alone a youth-led prevention.
So I can't have this whole like wealth of knowledge in front of me and not ask a question about the most important piece of advice or lesson learned. I think we've heard a lot of powerful ones in today's conversation, but if you had kind of a concluding thought or piece of advice to other adult allies who are interested in this concept or topic of recruiting to youth-led programs, what would it be and why?
I think it's incredibly critical that we approach this work with intentionality, with a flexible perspective, an open mind, and a humble attitude. I think as what young people need from us as adults is to provide that space, that safe space, that structure, and that support. And after that, I think they'll launch themselves. So I think it's just really critical that we think about the intentionality that we approach this work. Again, that flexible attitude and humble. You may go into this thinking you have all the expertise and the education, but I guarantee the young people know as much, if not more, than you do. And I think that's just an important attitude to keep in mind. And I think that's hard for some adult allies to remember, that they're not really in charge, that it is a partnership between those young people and yourself as an adult. And that's just not a role that as adults sometimes we're comfortable with.
It's been really interesting to me to hear the knowledge that you all shared and the common themes that exist across, even though you're geographically and organizationally diverse, the commonalities that you share and the lessons that you've learned of recruitment and how valuable that knowledge will be to the broader field of the Ohio Adult Allies. So I'm just really appreciative of your willingness to share your knowledge with others, and certainly inspired by the work that you all do.
Thank you for listening to the Ohio Adult Allies podcast. You can find more of our episodes on iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play by searching Ohio Adult Allies. Episodes are available at www.ohioadultallies.com.